guys, I'm Alexandra Harbushka, founder of Life with Herpes. I am so excited for this podcast interview. We are going to be interviewing the author, Lindsey Ellyn. I have the book right here, The Shame Game. So I've been talking about it recently in my community. I talked about it in our support group this week. Okay, so Lindsey wrote this book about being diagnosed with herpes and STIs, and in the countercultural approach to overcoming shame, improving mental relational and sexual health. You basically put everything in a book, which is what we need to do. And before I hand it over to you, as I was reading this book, and I can relate to it, we have all these emotions, and we are absolutely, I like to say, suffocated when we're diagnosed with the herpes diagnosis. And people listening can absolutely understand it. It's more than deer in the headlights. It is, I am stopped and like I'm frozen, I'm in molasses, or I can't move. So for you to get from that point to writing a book, there was a lot that happened. So let's talk about it. Let's get into it, Lindsey. I'm so excited. Guys, I will have this linked for you. It is a must if you've been diagnosed with herpes, The Shame Game. I have to say, it's a fun read. I like it, flipped through pages. When I say fun, it's not fun to talk about herpes, of course, but you have a really fun personality, and it made it relatable and it's life with herpes. So, okay.
Yeah.
Lindsey, let's just talk.
I love it. Well, this is so cool because I think that I'm super excited. Thanks so much for having me on today.
Of course.
Because this is why I wrote this book, to give those who are diagnosed either newly or recently or will be or have been diagnosed for a while, a resource where they can like come and like read a full story and not just a clip, and not just data driven paragraphs upon paragraphs. Like I'm sure you're so used to when you got diagnosed, you just are combing through data, try to like stop your mind from spinning. And like you were kind of saying, stop that almost like disassociation of body that at least I had. And so it's really cool to be here today and talk about it more. Yeah.
Yeah. And what you're talking about is when you're reading all that data and you're, looking at the CDC, or you're looking at Planned Parenthood, or wherever you're looking, it's usually very sterile and it's very statistical, and that doesn't feel good, right? It doesn't feel good. At least it didn't for me. And that's why I created Life with Herpes. I'm sure it didn't feel good for you either, to go like, oh, great, here I am. And what do I do with this? And I'm gonna say watching you. I wasn't watching you, but I was reading and I was picturing you go through your diagnosis. It allows people to connect and say, wow, that was me too. Or I had similar situations, or I had similar feelings, thoughts, concerns.
Yeah.
So were you like scared to launch, like to release this book? That had to be terrifying.
I had been diagnosed in 2017. And so this has been a long journey to get it to publish the book, right? And I think it's very sharing vulnerable stories, especially about sexual health and stuff. That is a very raw thing to share with people. And at the same time, I say it kind of towards the end of the book, is that like it's sex and sexuality and all this stuff. Like I think the stat was 0.45% of your life is spent having sex. And so when I look at my book, even though for most, because sex is not talked about, sexual health really isn't talked about in the robust and I guess healthy way of chatting about it and talking about all the repercussions that can happen if we're not smart about it, and just being diligent around our sexual health, for sure was scary. I think I also had enough time and space, and I went to therapy, and I had an awesome community behind me. I was able to tell my parents all this kind of stuff, like each little step in the road from when I first got diagnosed, and very immediately telling my parents. and then all the steps along the way to getting into community slowly of people that had it, and then getting a little bit more brave to talk about it. Like each of those steps made then when I got to publish it, when I got to kind of the writing, the publishing stage of it, was like I'd kind of been able to work through a lot of I'd been able to heal so many parts of it. And yes, as I get into relationship and stuff like that, obviously things come up. But I think there was something where along the way, I became so empowered with that my worth was beyond this diagnosis, that this was such a small part of my life. And yes, sometimes I have to deal with it, certain months or whatever, but like, it's really so little of my personhood. It's so little of who I am, that by the time I wrote the book, I didn't want to say it felt silly, because it can be very serious. And once you're first in it, it can be very these kind of all-encompassing feelings. Like it feels like your whole body is taken over, right?
Yeah.
But then I was like, wow, this is like everyone else who's walking around with cold sores or HSV1, right? Like it's just so, why is this not more normalized? Why is this not more talked about? And so I think I was scared at first, but then along the way, I think the healing helped me to really, in the confidence building along the way, and seeing people receive my story, receive me still, suggest people to date or whatever, like all that kind of then boosted my confidence, my morale around once I were to publish this, that I'd be okay, that the people that would receive it well would receive it. And those that maybe the small percentage that wouldn't, like they weren't meant for the story. So that's okay. And ultimately my job was to hopefully help someone that was like me, that say had a suicidal thought like I had, like not feel so dark. Like I wanted to help save someone from those feelings. Because there wasn't language when I first got diagnosed that I had right at my fingertips. So
I mean, it's terrifying, and it's again just isolating.
Yeah,
it's isolating and dark, and it truly is the stigma that creates this darkness around us, because we're like, oh my gosh, I'm no longer, I'm unlovable. I will never be loved again. And that's, I think, the scary part, that my love will be conditional, or someone will say, well, I'll love you even with this, or, well, only I will love you. That's another one that a lot of people hear. Well, only I love you. It's okay. No one else will love you, but I love you. It's the same maybe concern or fear, or, I mean, all these things spiral and just create a tornado of, oh shit, I was just diagnosed with herpes.
Right.
And when we look at it, it's just this microscopic virus that doesn't do anything.
Yeah.
Really.
And it's part of like the human experience. Like even if it, there's other STIs that do have longer term impacts and stuff like that. Right. And so, but even there, like you're still a person beyond that. And I think that that's what shame does. Right. And what you're dealing with when you get diagnosed with something like a STI, because it's tied up into sexual shame, is it's ready to isolate you. Like you said, it's ready to pull you away. It's ready to tell you lies. It's ready to make you an other, to put you in this other category, to put you in this, you're below. And I just was like, I'm not doing this. Like, this is not how I meant to live my life. But I just have so much compassion for that walk, because I was in it, and I was in it for so long. And it does take little moments. Like I didn't get to the end of that book, at the end of this publishing process, because I just was like heroically, just found it to be so easy. No, I had a long period of time where I was, not only I've had my first suicidal thought, but then I walked through a whole season of depression and then anxiety that rippled out from it. And it was really like my body sending warning signs of like, you just went through trauma, take care of yourself. You just went through something that was traumatic. How can you actually not push it down and not like let the lies overtake you, and like go into community, go talk to someone, go share your story, go find someone else with the same story, so that you're not alone. Like nothing people go through in life. There's very rare things where you're not going to find someone that's gone through the same thing. And it's just having the courage to do something despite the fear, to then get yourself to know those people that are like, I was right there with you. Or even I would say, as much as I had kind of two different scenarios, I guess, when I was told I was diagnosed with HSV-2 with medical providers. One was like shame-ridden, and the other one was really freeing, and like was like, this is going to be the little most blip on your whole life, right? Mm-hmm. And even that, like, once I started to get myself into the normalized or into a healthier version of like, when I saw a medical community talking about it in a way that was like, this really isn't that big of a deal. You can still go and have a healthy relationship, a sexual life. You can still have babies, like all these things. And those are the scary thoughts that come with something like herpes, that is just, especially as a woman, where you're just like so bogged down. And this is the vision I had for my life. Does that mean it's over? And it's not. It's really not. It can just be and I think in a lot of cases, the beginning of some wonderful, like, moments in your life. So.
It's a beginning of wonderful moments in your life. And can you imagine, had you not gotten herpes, who either you'd be with, who you would be, we'll get into the dating in a little bit, but you talked about dating and how it completely transformed the way that you date, and that's for a good reason. Yeah. Can you imagine, had you just been going down this path, because you were in your late 20s, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
20 what?
27, I think it was. Yeah.
Yeah, I was 27, 28 as well. So same point in my life. And we're almost dating in the way that we think we're supposed to be dating. And maybe it's, well, this is this person I'm supposed to marry, or this is the person I'm supposed to be with, and this is how I am supposed to act, and this is what we're supposed to be. And instead of learning who you are and what it is you want, you're just like out there doing what you think you're supposed to do and going along. And then think about like that's just, dating is one finger of your life. Think about all the other parts of you that you've grown because of this. Christianity, confidence. One of the things on dating, and one of the things that you quoted, and I chuckled when I read it because I loved it. You said, really, suddenly I could tell the difference between fool's gold and real gold. Real gold. Real quick. Right. And I think that's something that happens with being diagnosed with herpes. And that was my thought as well. I didn't think of the fool's gold and real gold. I didn't have that thought, which I love it.
Yeah.
But it's so true, because if somebody doesn't want to be with you because you have herpes, that's fine. That's okay. That's not your person.
Yep.
We think it's because we have herpes, but it really isn't. Either that person isn't able to digest it, or that person just isn't into you.
Right.
Period.
Yeah. And it's one of those things too, where, totally. Our relational life is just one finger, like you're saying, of our full life, right? Our spiritual, our mental, our, like, all these things, our career, what we're doing with how we're fulfilling our purpose here, all these kind of things. And it's one lens of it. And I think that, and it became apparent as I went, because I would say as I started to test out dating, I quickly actually realized that I wasn't actually going to need to tell anybody right away, because I actually was going to take it way slower and be like, you actually don't, like, I just had new boundaries. And instead of what I was supposed to do, what the movies and what, TV told me I was supposed to do, or made dating seem like, I started to be like, what am I going to decide to do? Who do I decide to be? Who do I decide to be in a relationship with? And man, if something as, as prevalent as herpes, which is under the whole herpes simplex virus family, like we know, I felt so calm coming into here, knowing I don't need to like explain terms of medical stuff.
I got it.
But like, if it's, the herpes simplex virus is such this common thing, if that is going to stop a partner from pursuing a relationship with you, that is a telltale sign that something else will come in a relationship, even if they maybe say yes to that then is gonna, down the line, gonna be like, this was just the early marker of it, of them not being able to see you through different hardships. There's gonna be things that happen in relationships. And so it totally is this kind of blessing in some ways to be like, are you here for me? Are you here for my body? Are you here for, like,
why are you here?
Yeah. Why are you here? And so I think it's, I also got to finally, instead of just nodding my head to the person I thought I should be, I was actually really able to start saying, like, what do I want to say yes to, what do I want to say no to, who I am. Like, it gave me more of my voice, actually, once I got diagnosed. Like, I started to have a voice that I never had before.
And we never thought that we think that we're just going to have to settle or become an old maid, and that's it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. And this is like part of it too. Like, I think that I'm so glad that you found the humor in my book to be a part of it, because it's like, not, some of the topics aren't funny, but I think one of the things that even a friend pointed out to me is like, you have to, at a certain point, the laughter stage is the healed stage.
Right.
And so you have to laugh along the way. You have to put in some, you have to make it light and fun, because it can be heavy, especially if this is the first time you're going through it or someone's in the weeds with it. Like, don't want to take away someone's real processing. But for those of us who have, processed a lot of a chronic diagnosis like this, it's something that you get to a healed stage when you can kind of laugh about it a little bit,
Yeah,
so
you could laugh about your dating and Chad. And I'm looking back at your identity crisis and didn't know what was going to happen, and you're putting a facade on. I want to get to, because this is something that I really talk about, and it seems so foreign when we're diagnosed with herpes. And you said, I set boundaries. This is what I taught. I mean, this is the thing. I'm like, what you realize now, the reason why I have herpes, the reason why you have herpes, the reason why everybody else has herpes. Well, number one, we had sex, number one. But that doesn't mean it could have been one partner. It could have been 100 partners. And it doesn't matter. What matters here is we didn't set boundaries.
Yeah.
We didn't say this. I've yet to talk to anybody that said, yes, I had the sex talk. Yes, I asked for the test results. Yes, I had the conversation about this, right? I've yet to talk to somebody that's done all those things.
Right.
We think that we have the conversation that's like, hey, you good? You clean? Yeah, I'm clean.
Right.
We think that's the conversation. We also assume that if we're married, or maybe the person just came out of a marriage, or maybe the person just came out of a 5-year relationship, we go, oh, well, obviously he's fine, she's fine, because they've been monogamous. And so there's all these assumptions.
Yeah.
But I cannot wait for you to share your boundary story. But I tell people, look, you set your boundaries. What is it that you want? Do you want to be monogamous with this person? Awesome. Then tell him, tell her, this is what I want. I want to be monogamous. This is what I expect. I expect, you don't have to say it like this, but hey, we're both going to go get tested, and we're going to go down to the clinic together. And hey, maybe we'll get an ice cream after. I don't know, but we're going to go down there and we're going to get tested, and I'm going to see your test results and you're going to see my test results, and we're going to use a condom, or we're not going to use the condom. The bigger thing that I think that even beyond herpes that we don't even talk about is pregnancy. And you talked a lot about that as well. It's like, hey, I'm on birth control. Like, I didn't have anything to worry about.
Right. Yeah.
Same with me, right?
Yeah.
I'm on birth control. I'm good. I've known this person for years. He would tell me. Of course, we would know. And of course, you would know if you had something. So please share, because I've kind of teed it up here. Please share your boundaries, because I love your transition of going with the norm to this is who I am and this is how I date.
Yeah.
And I say this in a way that I wish I would have had as much guidance as you did with it.
Yeah. I mean, I probably made myself the easiest boundary at this point, which is I'm actually not going to have sex until marriage.
I love that.
Which it's, you know, it is very definitely something that is countercultural, that doesn't get, that there's even shame around that. Like, oh, if you were going to wait until marriage, then, oh boy, there's this weirdness about it.
Yeah,
You're like,
well,
no.
how do you know? Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, how do you know if it's going to be good? Yeah.
Right. And I think we both grew up with not having like all those different things that you're talking about, of like no one actually like not going through and being like, oh, have we been tested? Oh, like all these things. Like we weren't educated along that way. And I think partly it's generational, right? Like now STIs are just way more prevalent with dating apps and just how easily accessible sex is across state lines and traveling and all these.
And expected.
Yes, that too.
It's once you come of a certain age, you're expected to do this. And it's almost on the same line. And I was thinking about this the other day. It's so silly. When like before you have sex with someone, like they would never see you naked. And then suddenly, like after you have sex, they see you, like they can see you naked anytime. It's like a weird, I don't know, all these like, sex brings out, it opens so many doors and we don't realize how many doors we open and maybe the doors shouldn't be open.
Totally. Yeah. And it's always like, I think that knowing that there's so many different ways that people operate, I'm always like, okay, if I were to talk to a crowd of college students, I would say, if you're going to decide to have sex, make sure that you're doing this, this, and this, like having a conversation about, let's go and get tested. Let's then share the results. Let's like set boundaries about what this means. And like, I mean, heck, how much do people actually say what they like versus this possibly porn influenced script about how they've kind of heard to do things or interact with the opposite sex? Like, have all those conversations, because if you can't have any and all those conversations, you probably shouldn't be having sex because of the things that come along with it, the repercussions, both good and bad, right? That come along with it, that then you're just connecting to someone. And the other side of me would be that I wish I would have also had this someone that said to me, you will not need to have sex with a partner before marrying them, because it is not actually the sexual part that's going to actually, like, it's actually all the intimacy parts that build up to then the act of sex that will then make that sex what it's supposed to be. And when you don't get it right, when you fumble it, like the whole point then is to learn your partner more and more. And you just, I started to realize that, you know, I didn't have too many sexual partners. And so but even like the ones I did, we're not, I don't think we're made to have all these different ways in which other people want to be in sexual relationship with us, right? Like it's actually I'm going to have to be very like, put all those experiences behind me and be like, how does this person want to enter into sexual relationship with me in marriage, right? Like it's just very different. You actually can't be like, oh, this worked with this person, this, you know, it just, and it's so, there's so many kind of lies and untruths told that makes, you know, young and old people feel like they maybe have to have sex in order to then know that then they can be in a committed or like a, you know, marriage with someone, where that's actually like, that's part of actually the marriage growth, even though I'm not in marriage. Like that's what I've come to learn is like, that's actually part of developing intimacy and actually knowing your partner really well through marriage, is then that vulnerability of sharing what you're interested in, what, you know, all that kind of stuff. Like that's built in a singular relationship, not in the experiences of all these other ones to then like deliver it to this, you know, very separate human that has different lived experiences themselves. So yeah.
I love that. I was recently watching on Netflix and I enjoyed it. At first I was like, I don't know if I like it. It's called Sex Life. Have you heard of it?
No, I haven't.
I ended up really enjoying it. There's only 2 seasons and it's kind of a Sex in the City. Anyways, and in the first episode, maybe, I don't know, second episode, the narrator, the main character was saying, like, I forget what she said. Like, I've been in 100 different Kama Sutra positions, as every girl should be before she's married.
Yeah.
And I heard that. And now as someone I am married, I'm in my 40s.
Yep.
It like, and I go, you know what? I don't know if every woman needs to experience that before she's married. I don't know if really that's back to culture and of where we were and where we are in our lives. And we're not too far off in age, right? You're in your mid-30s?
Yep.
Mid-30s. Okay. So we're not like generations different. And we both went to universities in Arizona. We both went to party schools. We both, did all that. And I'm not saying I'm judging. I'm not saying, but I look at, when I hear people talking about multiple partners, it makes me very sad. And it hurt because I feel like a part of you is taken every single time. And you also gain a part of that person every single time. And you're taking from these people. I just read a statistic that the sperm, the DNA, I'm not going to get it right. So please don't quote me. But as women, the sperm, it stores, like, there's memory of it. So we are storing our partner's emotions. We're storing all of that. And you have to think, like, do I want, eeny, meeny, miny, moe, Harry, Dick, and Moe?
Right.
Do I want all of their emotions, right? And that's going to impact me. It's going to impact a future marriage. It's going to impact a future child, right? These are my emotions that I have. But do I want all of these emotions? So there is something to be said. And I'm not trying to say, and I think you're the same, like, we're not trying to say like Mother Teresa here. We're not celibacy for life. We're not.
Right. Yes, totally.
And you could even be listening saying, well, it's easy for you to say, Alexandra, you're married. Right. I am.
Yeah.
But looking at it, and now looking back at my 20s, my 30s, and dating, I don't know if it's really necessary to have sex.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's one of the things that, being someone with the past I had and stuff, I also, I hope throughout my book, people also get, like, and there's actually a great book, Hooked, that actually talks about the medical kind of behind the scenes of what happens when you're having sex with someone, all that kind of stuff, that actually just totally annihilates all of the, the notions around that, there's actually not all these connections that are getting made. Also in the book, it reminds me that even if that was your story, even if that did happen, you actually can still, like, that doesn't also mean that you can't find your way through and have freedom. And if things come up, you can't kind of walk through the healing of that. And, but I do, I totally agree. I think one of the reasons why I wanted to write this book is because we have to start having different conversations, especially with our women, knowing that women are so impacted by, women just have a different part of the equation of sex with the repercussions of it and what it does to our body. Like, we have totally different bodies than men, and we just have to be even more caring and cautious of that. And I hope that through the book, and even through work that you're doing in the herpes space and helping support people, it's like continuing to educate more mothers, more daughters, more, even outside of women, educate more people around all these different things, so we can actually come to the table and be ready to actually know what we're getting into, not only right now, but what we're getting into for our future, and that's like, I wish I would have known that, that I was going to have to be rewiring some of the old partners I had at some point, and that I was going to have to be working through that. And like, you don't just like, leave that baggage in the past once you get married. Like, that comes with you. And if you haven't gone through it, like, you're going to have to then go through with your partner. And so that's, or, maybe not everyone does, but like, those are the sorts of things that healthier relationships work through some of those things in order to then truly just come as like a unified person, one marriage, right? Like two partners that are walking through life together in step. And 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 so I'm excited for moments like this, like opportunities like this, to share more of the whys behind, like, even myself. I'm not married and I'm not deciding to have sex. There's many whys, and it's not because I don't want to have sex. Right. It's just because it's not right for what I want my future to look like, right? And that's kind of what it is.
I think that hit it. It's what you want your future to look like.
Yeah.
And I think so many of us say, well, instant gratification. Well, I'm 23 years old. Well, I don't know when I'll get married. So why would I wait? It could be in 15 years. Like, that's 15 years that like what,
Yeah.
But it's, again, I think having that forefront, that projection to say, this is who I want to be and what are little steps I can take each day. Simple example, if you're ready to get married, if you're like at this point, like, you know what, I'm ready. I'm really ready to get married. Stop answering the booty call at 2 a.m.
Yeah.
Right? Opposed to saying like, oh, well, I don't have Mr. Right, so I might as well do this. Well, you're not acting as if the person you want to be. You're not the person you want to be, so you're not ready for it, right? You're not, for law of attraction or whatever, manifestation or whatever you want to say it. You're not acting as if.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I wish I would remember who I kind of heard this concept from. But I remember hearing, like, how you are dating is just practicing how you're going to be in marriage. And so if you're practicing in all these different ways, don't expect that once you get married, for all those feelings and all those emotions and all those desires to shut off. Like, what we do during our dating season is what's going to then follow us in marriage. And like to your point, if you're in the marriage mindset, you have to act like you're already in that marriage, because you can't be answering other people's texts. You can't be responding. And like, those things will come up, and then you're going to have to find a way to be bigger than that and set the boundary, because you want a healthy marriage. And so how we date is then going to be what we walk through in marriage, and like the things that, even now, as I've been training kind of myself in this single season of not having sex, right? Like, I'm having to think through things of, this is just prep work of how I'm going to have to mentally overcome even seasons of, say, like, once you do get married, there's going to be seasons where one reason or the other, you might not be able to have sex. And so are you going to then turn to someone else during that time when you have to, because of a health thing, because of, I don't know, having kids and stuff? Like, there's just seasons where you're not going to be able to have sex. And so you're actually making your marriage easier, knowing that you've already went through a season practicing what that feels like to hold out on that very human desire, very natural desire. You still are going to have those feelings, but those feelings don't have to become you. You don't have to actually act on all those feelings. Like, you can just let them flow,
Right. Right.
But
it's a season, and it's a boundary, and it's a choice. And a lot of times we think boundaries or restrictions or that it's so it's restrictive, but really it's freedom.
Yes.
It's allowing you to choose, this is who I want to be, and this is who I want to be with. I'm not going to settle. I'm not going to change who I am because of it. I am actually a stronger, more confident woman that is going to go out, and this is what I expect out of my partner.
Yeah. And if boundaries haven't been, if you haven't had a good relationship with boundaries before, if there's been fear or terror or things that are negatively associated, if you haven't had healthy versions of boundaries do seem harsh and all that kind of stuff. If you've had healthy versions of boundaries, to your point, it's actually freedom. Like, when you actually you actually have way more freedom than not. And I just, that can seem so counterintuitive to people. Like, wait, what? No. There's a reason why, even when you're raising kids, why setting up routines and stuff, that doesn't just end in childhood, that keeps going, right? Like, we should all be treating ourselves like big babies.
Right. Yeah. Oh, I love this. I love this.
Yeah.
So accurate. It's so accurate. And what I love seeing in the Life with Herpes community, and what I love seeing when I talk to people who are scared and are diagnosed with herpes, and they think, oh my gosh, I'm never going to have sex again, or oh my gosh, but all my friends are out having sex, or and this is how am I supposed to date? And a lot of times I ask the question, well, do you really want to be having sex with all those people? And usually the response is no, I just don't know what else to do. And thinking back to the younger Alexandra, or thinking back to, I'm sure you're thinking back to where you were in college or whatever area of your life, and you go, wow, this is just something that I'm told by society, or I'm told not to do. Well, don't have sex till you're married. Okay. Watch me.
You're right. Telling a kid not to reach for the cookies in the cookie jar, and you're like, wait, but now you just told me there's cookies in that jar. I'm going.
Watch me. Yeah. Or women aren't supposed to do that. Watch me. Right.
Yeah. Right.
But so I just want to make sure I'm not saying it's right or wrong. Same thing for you. I think you're not saying, hey, it's right or wrong. These are choices that have been made based on a herpes diagnosis, not because of the fear of transmission, not because of the fear of dating. It's
absolutely not.
I didn't realize how powerful I am, and this woke it up for me. This opened the door for me, and thank God it did.
Yes. Yes. Amen. Yeah. No. Yes. I mean, I don't even think I've ever in my mind articulated that. Yeah. No, that's nail on the head. Yeah. That was, yeah. It hasn't been because of, I won't even repeat what you just said, because that was
boom, done.
Boom, done.
So let's move on to Christianity. Let's move on to religion. And the reason why I want to talk about it is I haven't really dove into that with the Life with Herpes community. However, I do notice, and we did actually yesterday on our Monday support group call, a huge amount of people on the call, I would say at least 2/3 of the people on the call said, I have now turned to religion, being diagnosed with herpes. And it was really awesome to hear. And I myself, which I've really never shared my side of it, and I want to share so that you can, I think it was very similar to yours, is I was raised in a Christian household, went to church every Sunday. And so I was raised in a Christian household. However, once I kind of hit college, I was like, well, I believe, but I don't really want to go. And I would go on and off. And it wasn't until I became a mom that I was like, all right, God's calling me back. Like, I gotta go. Like this, it wasn't the herpes diagnosis. It was becoming a mom. And so I actually went back and got my master's in theology.
Amazing.
And became a minister. So I now incorporate a herpes diagnosis, motherhood, marriage, life, all of this together. And I go, oh my gosh, it's all connected, and people need to hear this. Can you talk about your journey with it?
Yeah. So I share a lot of it obviously in my book, but I would say that I started off kind of in a Lutheran Christian household. It was like a ish. It was like but it almost, because it felt like it was almost a sporting activity, just get me out of the house, but it was never really integrated in prayer and any sort of talk about Bible stories when I was growing up with my immediate family. And that was only on one side of my household that was kind of happening. My mom wasn't she was spiritual, but wasn't really tied to religion when I was younger. And so I was like dancing along in it every now and then because I had Christian friends, but I just nothing ever clicked. Nothing ever made sense. It was an extracurricular activity that I could go and meet boys, eat some pizza, and, not that I was actually ever dating anyone when I would go to meet boys at church events, but like, it was just a social place to go, but I didn't ever absorb it. And so I would say my 20s were then a continued like exploration of, I was reading The Secret and thinking about manifestation and that I could attract things. And then I read a book on Buddhism. And then I like was exploring all these different books. And then when my, right around, I would say a little bit before my herpes diagnosis, I'd ended a long-term relationship, like, 6 months or something before, maybe 9 months before. And so I was on my own for the first time after a 7.5-year relationship. And I was by myself in my own apartment being like, the spiritual knocking started being by myself for the first time after 7.5 years in a relationship, and having suddenly just, I never wanted to live alone. And so I had started to think like, what would it look like to like go and check out a church? It wasn't until after I got diagnosed where, you know, just when I got diagnosed, it was like my world was at a standstill, and I was just, it was a bit of spiritual warfare, because I was like, when I had my suicidal thought, that was I had depression before, I had moments of anxiety, I had all this stuff. Having a suicidal thought, even not ideating action, any of that, having just that blip on the suicidal spectrum terrified me. It also at the time felt like what felt like lightness. Like when I had that suicidal thought, I actually felt light. And I was like, oh, maybe I need, this is it. This is the answer. That was fake. That was
spiritual warfare.
Yeah. I was trying to show this is the way. And it was like, no. And so at the same time I felt light, I was thinking like, oh, this is what I should do. I then had a voice in my head say, there's more to life than this, that you're more than just this one thing. And that it was that moment that I kind of hold on to my head of being the turning point of when I was just like, I need to have something beyond myself. Like I need to have better words in my head. I need to have something beyond myself that I'm living for beyond myself, because I feel worthless. I feel dirty. Like all those words were just pouring into my ears. And so I started going to church, and I would sit. I'm a very extroverted, talkative person, cheerful, all this kind of stuff. When I went to church for about 4.5 years was just pretty much me going along by myself, going there, sitting in the pews, tears rolling down my eyes. I think I started off a little like unsteady going to church. Like I would go every other Sunday or whatever. But then it started becoming steady, because I was like, that was my fill up point, because I would go out after church and be like, I finally felt refreshed. I finally felt like there's something that I'm supposed to be living for beyond what I'm walking through right now. And I can't see it because I'm still in darkness, but like, you just have to keep going. And so it was Sundays for me that really brought me down to earth, brought me down to like being known more intimately by something beyond myself that I couldn't quite explain. And I just had so many moments it was those moments that then brought in peace. And I think once you start to experience, and whatever your spiritual practice is, for me, it was church. When you start to experience peace or bits of light, my inclination was to keep going, to keep leaning into that. Right. And so, but that was a slow and steady walk for like 4.5 years of just kind of going by myself, because I was like, I don't want to show up for anybody. I don't want to have to be I don't want to be volunteered for a leadership position. I don't want to don't want to show up with a smile on my face. I want to come in there and cry. No one asks me if everything's okay, because this is what I need right now. This is what I need. And I just felt like I had a safe spot there, and I got to know, what Christianity was more about, that all the commandments and all these things, the Bible, all these things that seemed so like, oh, this will make my life miserable. Like even the commandments, like they're just made to actually make us have this really healthy, joy-filled life. Boundaries that seem like they're not boundaries, that seem like you're not having fun. But I'll tell you, when I wasn't following what in my case was in the Bible, I was creating a swirl for myself. Like I was creating darkness. I was creating things that I didn't want to be in. And so, that's kind of, and I've had very kind of these spiritual moments throughout that then have sunk me more into my faith, that I just like, there's just no denying it at this point in my life. Right. Because it has been very physical for me. There's been certain scenarios. And so, yes, that's like, that was probably a lot, but that was my walk into it. But
I love it. And I'm sure people listening are like, oh my gosh, this is me. Or I had that little that little thing that's like, "Ugh, okay, here I go. I know this is what I'm supposed to do."
Yeah.
Or maybe you're hesitant. I know I sure was going back and getting my master's. I was like, what am I doing? Why? And minister? What?
I love it.
Like what? What?
Right.
Why? I'm like,
Well,
maybe it was the hormones.
yeah. Well, and there's something about it, as much as I had to fight through all the stereotypes of herpes, I also, in order to actually embrace and be more spiritually healthy, I actually had to fight against the stereotypes I was told about something like Christianity or about religion. And I've been able to disprove so many of the stereotypes through my walk that I was like, wow, I was here. There's just so many, like, once again, it came back to deciding, no, I'm going to go and actually like read this book, or I'm actually going to attend this thing, or I'm actually going to go and ask more questions. And then I'm going to decide based on everything I've read, based on my research, where I believe. And so like, even in that, it was like I don't want to hear everybody else's experiences. Like I'm going and deciding myself because I've made the decision, and I've done my own due diligence, just like in every other part that I was kind of having to decide in and take that ownership in.
Yeah.
But
that's interesting how you're like, I had to break through the stigma of herpes and through Christianity or religion.
Yeah.
I loved reading the part when you talked about the Sunday in church when the pastor brought up STIs. Can you share that story? Because I can imagine, had I sat there as well, I would have been like standing up and been like, you don't understand. Like, well, you share the story.
Yeah.
I'll commentate.
So I love it. No, so kind of simply, I basically had been going to church for a while, and I had found it like a safe haven, this place where I could go and feel like I was seen and loved and worthy and chosen, all this kind of stuff. And in the real world, what was crazy, I don't hear so many STI or herpes jokes specifically much anymore. But when I first got diagnosed, it was like every environment I was in was like, it was just attacking me left and right. And I was like, man, am I going to have to live with this herpes jokes all my life? Like just dodging this and me getting kind of re-traumatized in some ways, or just like, maybe not re-traumatized. I should probably use that word a little bit more specifically, but like kind of going back to where my mind is. And so I found like, okay, I'm not going to have to worry about this at church, right? Like I was like, this is going to be my safe space. And I very much, and it's nothing to go against the church or the pastor, but like he was telling a story about this scenario that he was kind of like watching this woman kind of have a not a breakdown, but like kind of yelling over the phone in public. And she said, I'm going to tell everyone that you have an STI, you have herpes. And everyone, like, he gave a look on his face, and everyone kind of like laughed in the crowd. And I was just like, I went from being this, like, I'm here, I'm loved, to being like, oh man, even here, even now. And it was tough. And then it also lit the fire in me, because I was like, right now, if we can't have leaders across the spectrum, whether it's in the medical world, in the religious world, whatever, actually shining some truth on like how prevalent this is, and there's so many people in that crowd, I'm sure, that have dealt with an STI in one way or the other, know somebody that has, that it kind of turned it. I remember listening to a recent podcast that you had with someone where you can do flight, fight, all that kind of stuff, but there was fire. I haven't heard of the word fire. Like you can go on fire, and you're kind of wanting to do something. So after I heard that, like it actually propelled me. I wrote him this 5-page letter, I think it ended up being, where I just was like, let me like break it down. I basically told him my sexual history and was just like, empowering him to like, there is this generation that is struggling with this topic, and this should be a place where like this is more known. And even though it wasn't your intention to bring shame, that joke just isolated at least me, but I'm sure more people. And so, yeah, it was a very, at the same time, even though it was hard, I also not maybe necessarily intentionally, but like I also didn't let that stop me from going back, because I knew the pastor's heart. I knew the church's heart. Like it still has so much taken care of me. But in that moment, I was like, "Ooh, that's the humanness of a pastor, right? That's the humanness of a church."
Or a stigma, the little bit of the stigma got in there because maybe he hasn't dealt with it.
Totally.
And he's like, well, if you just don't have sex, it's simple. You don't ever have to deal with it.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And so yeah, there's a couple stories in the book that I find to just be like, kind of, I sometimes have things in my life that are just kind of movie moments where I'm just like, this would happen to me, like, and so, but I actually am, I have so much grace for that moment. And also, that truly was like one of the catalysts that started me when I wrote him that letter. That was like my first time fully sharing with someone in a very clear way. I then tried to apply for a TED Talk. Like it lit a fire of me wanting to actually advocate for this additional voice, to break the shame, break the stigma, so that other people can be helped. And this wouldn't like control so much of people's emotions and so much people's lives, so we could start talking about it more. So yeah, it was and you need to include some of those stories, like the weight of it and the humanity across all these different stories of just like, this is life. And then how do you decide to then move to the next thing? Or how do you decide now to be in that environment, or maybe to educate someone, or to whatever the next step is. So yeah, the book is full of stories around like me going from undeciding and not listening to myself to like, no, now I'm going to listen to myself, or now I'm going to help other people, or now I'm going to help educate others, or that don't know anything about it. And this is really empowering.
Exactly what the shame game is doing.
Love it.
Me too. And I like seeing the heart on your wall.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, that's the heart from the book. And I'm like, is that the same color? Like, there's the color schemes back there? Yeah. That's so cool.
Yeah.
That is exactly what you're doing. And it is truly a journey that we're on. And I can speak for myself that I am truly thankful that I'm on this journey. I am thankful that you're on this journey. I'm thankful that there's many other people on this journey that are like, I see it and I'm like, we're all going to become butterflies.
Yeah.
And we change, and thank God that this happened. Otherwise I would be the Alexandra that is, insecure, unsure, married to the wrong person, all these things. So that's what it's all about. I have a final question for you, and I forgot to ask it in the beginning.
Okay.
I used to ask this question on my podcast in the past. I don't know why I got out of it, because I think what I like about the answer is well, I'm going to ask the question.
Okay.
What does the shame game smell like to you?
Ooh, smell like.
Mm-hmm.
It smells like, I don't know why I immediately think to myself, it smells like warmth. It smells like these, and maybe this is because I'm not super florally person, but it smells like warmth, and it smells like almost like cinnamon rolls baking in the oven, and like being with like, out in the woods with friends, and like knowing that like you're in this this warm atmosphere. With a little bit of sweetness, because the cinnamon rolls have icing on it, right? Like there's this little bit of twinge of sweetness too. And so, I think the shame game smells like warm cinnamon rolls out in the woods, because I also think that there's something that's so calming about nature, and that's brought me so much peace as I've kind of gone through this journey. That is being someone that's more visual, a smell is a good one.
Right. And because it depends, like it's such a good question, because what I heard from you was comfort. It smells like comfort to you. It brought all the things that were comforting to you. That's how I interpreted it. And people listening might say that's not at all how I interpreted a cinnamon roll in nature. I interpreted it as family, or I don't know,
Right. Yeah.
but the way that you describe it allows all of us to go, wow, this is really the deep of what this shows what Lindsey went through. This describes your transformation. So.
Yeah, thanks. And it's multi-layered, and it takes cinnamon rolls take a long time to make too. If you make them
and they're multi-layered.
And this took a long time to make. I love it.
So, Lindsey, if you had any last thoughts or comments or something you wanted to say to someone listening, what would you say?
Yeah. No matter where you're at in this journey, one, just know you're absolutely not alone. Two, if this feels like the biggest thing in your life, I hope that you see that this kind of big ball of shame, this big ball of stigma, that you will actually become bigger than that ball of shame and stigma one day. And that this is such a little part of who you are and your worth, and that you are chosen, that you will be chosen, that you'll be loved, and not because someone just decides that they're gonna take the risk to, like love someone with her. Like, this will be the most background noise to like everything else that your life is. And, I just really hope that coming out of hearing maybe this conversation or more of these sorts of podcasts, that you get the courage to share your story with someone who you never thought you'd share your story with. And I just pray that you, no matter how you're met, you walk away with peace and knowing that you just did something really courageous. And yeah, I just hope that so many women and men go out there and like share their story with someone, so that we can continue to just break the darkness that comes with this and help people. And so that would just be my encouragement, is like, share your story. That is the shame game. The whole thing of the shame game is this overarching, like, go and choose one person that you never thought, that you thought you'd like go to your grave dying with the story in your head. Like, go and share that story in a safe space. Go and share that story with someone else, and people will surprise you, and people will actually show you love and acceptance and all the things in just magical ways. And I can say that because I've been met with these astounding ways that people have loved me, no matter what story I've shared with them. So
love that. I'm going to end on that. Okay. Go share your story. Well, thank you, Lindsey. Thank you for being here, guys. This will definitely be linked, The Shame Game. Please check it out. You will enjoy reading it. I saw it's on Kindle as well.
Yes.
And it's a quick read, and it's a fun read. And of course, again, I say that with an asterisk. Talking about herpes is not a fun thing, but hey, that's what we're trying to do. It's Life with Herpes. We're making we got to smile, we got to laugh, we got to have cinnamon rolls in
there
nature.
You go.
So here we go.
Love it.
All right, friends. I'll see you in the next episode. Thanks so much. Bye, guys.